Hey y'all, today let's do a little homage to one of the channels I like to watch on YouTube, which is Steve at Key West Kayak Fishing. He likes to use some Cabos. I think he uses like a 30 or 40. This is a 50, but this will be a breakdown, service, and reassembly of a Cabo 50 PTS-E. So let's just get started. I'm going to remove the spool and the handle. Just undoing the drag knob there so we can pull the spool off. Backwards or counterclockwise for the handle, and I think we'll do the handle first, then jump to the rotor with the bail assembly, and then inside the body of the reel. And there's not much I'm going to do here. This feels fine. I'm just going to open this up and add some oil inside there. I'm undoing these two screws. That plate comes off. Then you have a little cap or cover inside there that we need to pop out as well. And I don't think I've ever seen one of these where that entire cover is intact. There's always a crack in there somewhere. So that looks good. Yeah, I'm just gonna add some oil to it. And today's oil I'm using Relax, which is what I use most of the time. Adding oil at the top there, some at the bottom right there. I'm just gonna work that in a little bit. Sounds better already. I'm just going to cover it back up. I'm just going to clean off the threads on this end here and add some grease. And for grease I use the Pen Blue Grease. That's good enough. Alright, now to access the rotor we're simply going to pull this up. I can't tell you that this is either a one piece or a two piece assembly. I can tell you that a lot or most, if not all of the ones that I have serviced, and this actually slips up and comes off, and I just pop that shaft out right there. I'm not telling you that's the way it's supposed to be because the schematic doesn't show that, so I'm gonna push that and pull that out. And be careful with this because it's kind of like a rolled metal, so you don't want to damage that. And now we can undo that set screw right there and remove that lock plate and the nut. To get the nut off, it's counterclockwise to remove it. Just simply going to pull it up like that. And let's go ahead and open this up. I'm going to undo these clips because I want to get inside here. There's a magnet. They have magnets on the arms here that I want to add a little bit of grease to. Not too much, but a light amount. So we're going to start by rotating one of those tabs up to the top so we can use it as leverage to kind of pull it off. And if that doesn't work for you, you can always try to stick it inside one of the gaps on the E-clip and pull it off that way. This usually works. That's a good support to kind of pull that up or pry it up. You can pull that out. Same thing for this one. I'm going to rotate that one up. Let me show you what I'm talking about. That E-clip right there has a little ridge or edge to it. And then I'm just going to use this and just pull up on it. Like so. So now we can just pull these out. This one came out. And same for this one. Remember, the magnets are pretty strong, so you might have to use some force to get them out. These two shafts are the same size, so no need to worry about those, but I'm going to leave them separate just so we see how they look. And this actually looks pretty good. It's nice. It is rare to see them look this good. We'll do a little bit of cleanup here. Let's open this cover up so you can see the trip arm that's underneath there, but that's all you're going to find. Let's make sure the screws aren't just different sizes. And they look to be the same size. But again, we're going to keep them separate just to make sure. All you have under here is a trip arm. We'll clean all this stuff up so we can kind of add some new grease to certain points. Alright, so for the line ruler, we're going to undo a screw that's in here. actually supporting this portion of the bail wire as well as the bail arm, so I don't get a lot of rotation in it when I'm doing this. When you open this up, what you're going to find is obviously you have the bail arm with that screw coming out of it. You're going to have a washer, or sorry, a bearing, spacer washer, or a bearing washer, another washer over here somewhere, and another bearing. So that's the way it looks in the setup, just like so. Alright, so I'm just going to use a toothbrush, some paper towel, and some Q-tips to clean this stuff up, and I'll come back to you and show you how to put it back together. Okay, so we got our new bearings. We're just going to add some oil to them. Then I'm going to kind of work that in to make sure they kind of go inside. And then we'll put it back together. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of grease around that post. Do the same thing for these bearings. And the reason I do it is because this is usually for saltwater stuff down here. So I want to kind of protect them as much as we can from any kind of salt water getting inside and damaging them. So I coat the entire surface area. I'm just going to use my fingers for these spacers here. And we're going to do the same thing inside here on the line roller where those bearings are going to sit. And I think that's all we're going to do for that. So the first thing that goes on would be one bearing. Line roller can go on either way. Stick it on just like that. One of the washers. Then we'll stick the final bearing on there. And then the second washer goes over it just like that. On this bail arm, you'll notice that it's keyed. So there's a little channel inside there. The end of that post is also keyed, so they have to fit up. And you can just kind of rotate it as you go over it until you feel it lock in place. Then we're just going to screw it together. I'm going to go pretty snug on this right away, but when you go to reassemble this, if it's slightly off, you can loosen this up so that that channel inside there can be slipped a little bit, so you can set the bail wire properly. Alright, so next I'm going to add a little bit of grease to the post right there. That was a bit much. And we're going to do a light amount of grease on this magnet right here. And the same for the magnet on this side right here. What we're trying to do is protect that metal or that magnet from getting rust inside there, but trust me, it's a difficult thing to do. So grease in here where that trip arm is going to go. A little bit of grease around the trip arm as well. And I did forget to put some inside of right there. So let's go ahead and do that just a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is put this side on, away from the the bail, the line roller side. And yeah, this is kind of where it gets a little bit tricky, but it's not that bad. Kind of line that up, stick one post through, and then we're going to take one of our E-clips and I'm going to try to hand press this on there. If you can't do it that way, you can obviously, ow, I can't do it that way. We're going to use a screwdriver or pliers to put it on there. I'm going to use a screwdriver. That's kind of my preference in general. So oh, that's tough. Now when you put that on there, on that post on there, you want to make sure that that channel that the E-clip sits on, which is right there, as you can see, there's a little channel right there. You want to make sure that this E-clip is going down through that. Now we're going to take our trip arm, stick that in through. That long end is going to be facing down, just like that. Right that kind of to the top. And on the back in that channel right there, that's where that arm is going to sit. It's kind of inside there, like that. Now we can put this on and then cover it up afterwards, or vice versa. Either way works. Same deal as for this side with the E-clip. I got that one on there. That's good. Now we're just going to cover it up. Don't over tighten these screws because you're going on top of a plastic plate. You don't want to crack it. Test it to make sure it works, and we look good. While we're here, we can go ahead and add some grease inside this channel right here. Some on top there, and some on the bottom, just kind of around there. Now we can open this reel up. I'm going to start with the side cover that uses a Torx 10. And there's 4 screws you have to remove here. I think these are all the same size, but I'm going to make sure. But it's kind of laying them out. Yeah, they're all the same size. Now we can pull this cover off, and or hopefully we can. Yep, good. And now we can rotate this down slightly. Can undo that screw there to get the shaft out. Pull straight up, like so. You can pull out the main gear, this block. Now we can remove the oscillation gear by undoing this screw in the middle here. There's a couple pieces under here when you take the screw out. So we're going to pull out this gear. You'll have a bearing inside here. Then you have a cup that sits in. But under here there's a plastic piece. I'm not going to remove it. That's just another piece that's on there. That's all. I'm going to kind of leave that on there, I think. Let's set this to the side, and then we'll take the top off. Show you what that looks like. To get to the pinion and the to the anti-reverse, we're going to undo those screws there. And that feels a little iffy to me, so I'm going to kind of spray that down a little bit with some Corrosion X. And I'm going to kind of work that back and forth as I come up with the screw. Yeah, that feels better. I'm just kind of loosening that up so that the Corrosion X can kind of work its way down inside there and help loosen the hole that this has on top of it. Yeah, that all feels good now. These screws will be the same size, so don't need to worry about these. Or in terms of what size goes where. But let's show you just in case, or just to make sure. And there you go. Now you can pull this cover up. That wasn't very graceful, but you know, you got the point. And now we can pull the stack out. Inside that stack you have that anti-reverse. I'm going to be slightly careful. I'm trying to get this out of here because I don't want to damage anything. So let's use a bigger one. That should work, I think. Yeah, there we go. And we can remove that bearing on this side. There. And I'm not going to worry too much about these these gears because I'm gonna be replacing them. So there goes that. I'm gonna take the shims, if we have any on this side, off of the main gear, and then we're gonna replace that. Okay. All right, so that's it. I'm not gonna take this ramp off of here, but you could if you wanted to with that screw. And I think there's nothing else we need to show you on here, so I'm gonna get this stuff cleaned up, then I'll come back to you guys in a second. All right, see you guys in a bit. Okay, so a couple of things I didn't show you was that there's a bushing that goes inside that space right there, and also this rotor piece. I was actually looking for it earlier and I couldn't find it, but that sits inside this cap, but on top of that housing right there. So I'll show you that when we put it back together. We're gonna take the pinion and do that stack first. Just gonna grease it up. I like to grease the entire area of it up here as well, and those threads where the nut sits or rides on. Now we can take our cavity in here, fill that with some grease, the entire place. And I'm going to stick this bushing in first before I forget it. Just drops into place like that. And now we can take our anti-reverse clutch sleeve, put that on. You'll notice that there's a beveled or indented side on one end, and the other end is flat. That beveled side will be facing up towards the spool. So it's going to go on looking just like this. And we can take our clutch and put that over it. I'm going to add a little bit of grease around the clutch, but it should be fine at this point with the grease that's inside the housing. Now we can take our bearings, sit that on top, add some oil to it. Just kind of work that in. And I'm going to drop this into place. I'm going to pinch it together for support, and then just kind of drop that in place. You have to rotate that clutch to find the channel or groove that it sits in inside the housing. Make sure everything sits flush. And now we can take that washer, stick that on top. Take our O-ring right here, or our gasket, sit that on top just like that. I'm going to add some grease inside here, kind of help keep that gasket lubricated. Make sure it's centered. You don't want it offset somehow. Then we're just going to place this on there like that and screw it in. Snug those down. And that's it for that. Now we can go to our block and gears inside here. Go ahead and grease the main gear, the new main gear. And the same for the pinion. I'm going to grease all the surface area of it. Add a little bit of grease inside that hole where the shaft of the handle is going to go. Same kind of thing for the block. We're going to add a little extra grease to the post right there. And then for the block, we're going to add a little extra grease inside that channel right there. And the rest is kind of the surface area of all of it. Now I'm going to take our bearings and we're going to oil those. Add a little bit of grease inside that hole where that bearing is going to sit. Not too much. Somewhere around there. Don't really need it, but we're going to put it there anyhow. And some of those ridges where that block will be riding. Now we can take our first bearing, stick that inside there. Take our crosswind our oscillation gear. Stick that on like that. Have that post somewhere towards the bottom. And I'm going to place that bearing inside over the post just like that. Now we can secure that with the screw. Fairly snug. Don't go too hard on these things. Now we can take our gear, drop that in. Take our shaft and we're going to stick that through and then secure it. I'm going to add a little grease to the bottom right here where it fits inside the block. You can grease the rest of it if you wanted to. I'm not going to do that. Stick our block on there. Where the block sits is looking just like that. The flat side of the shaft is going to be facing up. So we'll stick that through the block and then secure it. Now we can stick our washer on there, or our shim, then the bearing, and I'm going to add a little bit of grease inside here where that bearing sits on this side. Go ahead and get that covered up and secured. Before I do it, I'm going to feel this, make sure it feels good, and it does. So let's go ahead and secure it. Let's go ahead and get this bushing sit on top inside the main gear, the pinion gear there. Looking just like that. And now we can take our rotor and just stick it on top. Before we do that, you can actually grease this if you wanted to. I'm going to do it here, but it's not necessary for this reel. It works fine without it. Secure it with the nut, and it's righty tighty on this one, and that looks about right. We're going to just place this washer over it and see if it is, and it is. Snug it down. I'm going to stick this pin back in. And while I do that, I'm actually going to add some grease to it. Just like so. And now we can stick this over it. Add our spool. It's keyed, so you want to make sure it goes all the way through. There we go. Test that drag out. That's feeling really good. Yeah, that feels really good. Let's test the rest of it out. Feels good. Anti-reverse works. Bail flip works very nice. All right, if you guys found the video useful, please hit a thumbs up, and thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.